So as promised, we have a gang here in the studio that played for Coach Buddy Marcello. And I can't promise you they'll be well behaved today because they weren't well behaved way back when. Y'all all in different facets of just strategies and what he meant, different years, of course. So SP, you had the privilege of playing on a state championship football team. Now that was Coach Marcello's only state championship football. He had several in baseball, we all know 7. So we'll talk about what did it mean, what was he like, what was practice like when you got on the field, because obviously he wasn't that much older than y'all. There were a few years, but he was a young coach. What was it like?
Well, Buddy was a quiet guy. You know, you couldn't read him all the time. He used to throw things at me because he thought I was out of commission, you know. He'd run me out the classrooms and all that, but this guy took care of me from the time I hit freshman. I played freshman ball. I led it that year because of him, and this guy went on every year. He was a mentor to me, and he had some coaches there. You know, Lord Danos, Al Robichaud. One of the guys with Buddy was Father Robichaud that coached. He coached every year until I was a senior, and these guys really took care of me personally, and they helped me to be all-state my junior and my senior year, and also when we won state in Delhi, 7-6, and they had 4 inches of water on the field, and the Delhi team was telling us that they wanted to cancel the game, and Buddy says, I ain't making a drive all the way up North Louisiana. We're going to play this game. And we beat them 7-6, and that was a big thing for high school in Homer, Louisiana. Unbelievable.
I want to ask Mr. Dickey Faki a question. Obviously, once a program starts, and I can allude to like Coach Albert's softball program, when the winning starts, makes it pretty hard for the younger people coming up to let it down, to let it slip. When did you sense that Coach Marcello had that X factor to be a great coach, and was his practices real discipline? Was he pretty strict on y'all?
Well, Buddy had a way of getting the best out of material that he had. A lot of guys didn't know how to put a jock strap on straight, okay? Yes, SP's one of them, probably. But anyway, you know, you take 35 young kids, never played football. We didn't have Bantam League football in Homer in those days. We had sandlot football. You got a bunch of guys together and you went and play football. Mm-hmm. Well, Buddy came in 1950, and he taught us how to play football. He was a pretty tough coach. You ran a lot of wind sprints after practice, and we had 2 and 3 hours of practice, offense and defense. He wasn't easy. He didn't curse. He didn't chew you out in front of everybody. He didn't let you drink water. We would not have a drop of water during practice. No water at all. Hot August sun. Anyway, he got the most out of every kid that he coached. And you wanted to win for Buddy. He was that type of guy. Because he worked his behind off changing a chicken coop into our field house. They raised chickens there. We had a couple of toilets and a couple of showers and a locker room. I mean, you know.
Yeah, but I heard in 8th grade you didn't get the shower because the upperclassmen got the shower, so y'all had to go home and shower.
Yeah, the older guys were excuse me. Yeah, that's right. We had to go home to take a shower. I mean,
I just
you know.
wanted to verify that story.
We were the little guys. But in 2 years from then, when we got to be sophomores and those bigger guys were juniors, we had some hell of scrimmages. We scrimmaged those guys, our class against their class, for hours. And it was bloody. It was the hardest. It was harder than any football game I ever played in.
All right. I want to ask Coach Diggs something, because when I was talking to him in 2004, I said, who's an ideal athlete that you associated with? He said Lely Day. What does that mean to you?
I was really surprised, to tell you the truth. but anyway, I was one of the first ones to start at the old school. I would like to say one more thing. I'm gonna add to it. We used to play with the nuns, while the Maronite nuns were there, and we had no football at all, no things. We'd play after the school, and we would have some rough stuff. So anyway, we played football, even though we had no coaches, anything. So we began to get people to, Buddy came to my house. He said, look, we got to get all the guys together. So he always picked on me. I said, come on, Buddy. I said, look, I got some stuff to do. He said, come on, you got to come with me. So anyway, so I met with Buddy, and sure enough, I played 3 years. The first year we only had 4 games, and then we had 9 games, and then we had 10 games. We had lost one game. We lost. It was after we lost a game against Donaldsonville. In those days, you play one game, you're out. So we had 10 games, but we had great football. We had a couple of running backs, like Marvin Leonard was absolutely one of the top guys I've ever seen.
Didn't he go to Southwest Louisiana after?
He went to Southwestern. He majored in football. Also, he majored in, he was a great baseball player. Buddy was really, someone had mentioned, he really was crazy about baseball. There's no question about it. But even as I went the first game, the second, it got better and better and better. I always saw Buddy as, he never was really, he never get excited about anything. He'd do what he had to do, and I followed him over the years. I finished school, and then I went to college, and I came back, and he called me one day. He says, you got to come coach with us. I said, well, okay. So anyway, so sure enough, it happened. And then he told me, he says, look, we're going to South Terrebonne. You got to take over. I said, well, that's what we're going to do then. So anyway, that happened. So Buddy was always one of the, he was just so easy to talk with. Everything was smooth. My buddy right here was saying that I thought I thought he gave water as much as anybody wanted it. I don't ever remember him.
Oh, no, we never had.
Maybe when you came along, that happened.
I was right behind you. So it was the same.
Did he give y'all salt tablets?
Well, he did that too, but he was very cautious about making sure everything was okay.
He had an ammonia dip with ice, and everybody would suck the towel with ammonia.
Florida water.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
what we had, the cold ammonia towel. No water.
So anyway, Buddy was one of the finest guys I've ever met in my whole life.
Of course, Coach Gano coached us at Vanderbilt, but he talked about you being his first quarterback at South Terrebonne. But y'all had already sort of known the mystique about him.
Yes.
Were you nervous moving in that you were going to be coached by Buddy Marcello?
We actually looked forward to it. I did, Bruce did too, because we knew him. We went St. Francis in 7th and 8th grade. And then because of downsizing the number of classes going into the freshman year, we had to end up going into the public school system. But we really wanted to play for him. So, as I said earlier, once he got the job at South Terrebonne, it was a no-brainer for us. That's where we were going. And he's the one that told me, he said, you're going to now play quarterback. Because I'd played tight end before, and he said, you're going to play quarterback. But he was such a good quarterback coach. Just as Lally and Dickie had said, is that it was just great to learn from him.
But what do you think and it's got to make you feel special too, that he was a pretty good judge of character, obviously looking at his career now and seeing especially the talent that came out of South Terrebonne and the amount of NFL players they had. He's the one that told Jay Penison, where he was going to move to in college, center. Jay Penniston said, no, I'm going to be a professional tight end. He said, you'll never make it there. You'll be a center. And he did pretty well with his career.
Yes.
He was a good judge of character. What do you think he saw in you to make you a quarterback?
Well, he told me it was leadership. He said, I need somebody at the quarterback position that the other guys are going to respect and who's going to take charge out there. He and I spoke about this just a couple years ago when my grandson Landon was playing at Vanderbilt. And I would sit out in the bleachers in the end zone just so I wouldn't have to put up with the parents in the stands. And he would come sit out there with me. And it was so great, Martin, because we would analyze the game taking place. And just to hear him, how keen he was and still attuned to what each person's doing, what they're doing as a team. Then he'd ask me my opinion. Then he would always go back and talk about the St. Francis days, the South Terrebonne days, and I was telling Dan, and he would always talk about the game with West Jefferson, with the interlocking legs. So it was amazing his memory and keen memory of being able to remember everything going on and just for that many years and the details that he was aware of. And he and I talked about it, and I asked him, I said, Coach, I said, it had to be tough at South Terrebonne because Bruce and I were the only two that really knew him, and that was from being at St. Francis. And, of course, my older brothers, Louis and Gene, felt like we knew all these guys forever. And everyone else at South Terrebonne had never played ball under his system. Most of them had never played organized football. So to put in a new system where no one knew what that system was, and it was tough. And he told me from the get-go, he said, you're going to be my quarterback, and he said, you have to learn what everybody does on every play. He said, we can't expect these guys to remember every play and every block and assignment. So you have to know, and we worked on it in practice. He would send in a play. We had to call it quick enough so I could tell at least 2 or 3 folks what they had to do. And that was all worked on in practice. That's how strategic he was.
Yeah. And you inherited a lot of that. I remember I tell you all the time when you coached us baseball, it was situation. There wasn't a time on the field when we did not know where the ball was supposed to go. Did you learn that from Buddy Marcello?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, when I decided I was going to go into coaching, he's the one I really attempted to emulate because I learned so much from him.
Danny, getting back to the family situation, what was he like away from sports, or was he ever away from sports?
No, that's a very good question. He was never away from sports, okay? Uncle Buddy loved his family. There's no two ways about that. But he was never far away from sports. And I think that came from his mom and dad. Papa Marcello loved the New York Yankees, okay? Mama loved baseball. And I think that's where his drive came from. Coach Gano just said something about his memory. I would sit there with him, and he would talk about who was on second base in a game in the 3rd inning in 1957. Don't question it because he was correct, okay? You know, back in the St. Francis days, my father-in-law, Ray Marcello, was driving the Bishop around. And Bishop was coming to Homer, Bishop Shakespeare. And he said, you know, Ray, we need to get a little athletic program at that school, St. Francis. He said, you think you could find somebody? He says, I got just a man. My brother's graduating from college. I think he had already graduated, and he was at LaCache, and then he started the program. Also, Coach Lely mentioned about the nuns, and I think you had this on your program when we inducted him into the Hall of Fame here at Terrebonne General. He said he was practicing one day, and I think it was Sister Lua looked out the window, and she said, Coach, I'd like to see you after the game. And he went in, after practice, excuse me. He went in, and she said, Coach, I don't like the way that the quarterback has to put his hands underneath the center. And Uncle Buddy was quick, all right? He said, sister, that's the way they do it at Notre Dame. She said, it's okay then. All right? But that's how he was. He was very quick. But to say that he ever got away from the game, no, I don't think he did, because he just loved sports that much.
You know, I asked him on the 2004 interview, I asked him who his favorite band was. And his first answer was not surprising. He said, Glenn Miller. I said, well, fantastic. But then he said, and I love the Bee Gees. My era. And I'm sitting there going, he goes, oh, yeah, watch them on Channel 12 all the time. So Bee Gees and Glenn Miller, then Jack Nicholson, Ingman Birdman, I'm sure I'm saying the name wrong, but then we got to the coach. And I said, what coach do you admire the most? And Eddie Pilar's going to love this one. It was Nick Saban. Nick Saban. So that was some of the people that he looked at. He said, because Nick Saban's drive would just win. Doesn't matter kind of guy, just win all the time. So did you know the Bee Gees?
I did not know that he liked the Bee Gees. If I'd have known that, I'd have had it in my Jeep when we took rides together.
Load up the Bee Gees because he loved the Bee Gees.
That's a good one. You know, I want to say one other thing. You know, Eddie and him were talking about baseball, and somebody alluded to the 7 championships. Well, they were like 6 in a row, and then they skipped a year and then won it again the year after that. And the reason for that was, and maybe some of these guys might have been on that team, Buddy called a practice before the state championship game, and a couple of them went fishing and didn't show up for practice, and he did not play them in the state championship game. So he not only coached, he built character, and he built young men to turn into men. And to me, that's a tribute to the way he was. They didn't show up for practice, so
Anybody in this panel
I would
the one
never
that went
say.
fishing? Raise your hand. All right, I'm just checking. Does anybody in the panel know the ones that went fishing? All right, good. All right, there we go. And y'all wouldn't tell me if y'all knew. Y'all not gonna rat on each other, especially Plara back there. He talked about you and Dickie a lot on that 61 team. And I think it was you, Dr. Dickey, and was there Bro? John that went to LSU after. What got you to LSU? What did he teach you that brought you to the next level, especially LSU?
Well, I think he paid for him to hire us, to give us a scholarship. Johnny was a pitcher, and he was very good. Dickie played second and hit better than I did. But everybody hit better than I did. And I played first. And it was just, I think, a combination and that reputation that he had built, Coach had built, not our reputation, but Coach's reputation. He took us our senior year to LSU to play the freshmen, and we beat the LSU freshmen. But we had Hal Haydell. I forgot to mention that. Okay. But you know, at that point, that was his reputation, I think, that really preceded us, and helped us, you know, get to wherever we got. You know. But I got 2 stories I'd like to tell. One, Coach started baseball in 1951, and he finished at St. Francis in 61. And for 10 years, he used the same signals to steal or take or hit and run. And how do you win using the same signals? Even SP remembers those signals. Okay.
You're just hoping the other team's not smart enough to pick them up.
No, he had us playing for him. That's why he used the same ones. Okay. All right. The other thing is that in SP's senior year, when we won the state championship, you know, he's a lot older than us. We used to have initials on the dummies for practice. And we got to the last game of the year, and we were playing Thibodeau College. And as Dickie Falke said, the man never cursed, okay? Never, hardly ever raised his voice, you know. He wrote TC on the dummy. And all I remember is walking out there, and he said, it does not stand for Thibodeau I can't say what he said what it stood for. It doesn't stand for tough whatever, you know, like, let's go get them, boys.
Right.
And that was the fire, I think, that Buddy was able to give to us as very well. You know, like SB said, he was all American. SB was awesome. I said earlier today when we walked in, he was my idol, you know. But we had some good ball players, but we didn't have great ball players, you know. And at that point, I think Buddy got something out of us as mediocre ball players, particularly myself, of being able to accomplish something. And that is, I think, a great attribute to me and to people who played for him, you know. Lely's lucky he got to coach with him, you know. Well, I mean, that you know, everybody has the same attitude toward Coach. No doubt about it. He was great to us. I think he made it, if we accomplished anything in our lives, he really had something to do with it, you know. So very thankful for being able to play with him. As most of us found out later in life, we got to be more friends with him rather than just a coach and a player. We used to take him out to my pond and cook.
Yeah.
And one last story, he and Bobby Thompson Sr. was sitting there one night talking about a play in 1956. Now, how in the hell? I thought they made it up, you know. but SP will vouch for this. He could remember plays. Right. Now, SP couldn't, but Coach could. Okay? SP ran on the field one day.
they tough on you, partner.
SP ran on the field one day. He said, Herman, Pellegrin was our quarterback. Herman, Coach said run any damn thing you want. Because Buddy used to call all the plays.
That's pretty good.
But again, look what he did for SP in a sense. What he did for Eddie Pilara. It's just unbelievable, the string of people of what he did for us. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Let me ask Dr. Dickey, because he said in the interview I had with him that it was a pleasure coaching coachable kids. Now, today it's a little tougher, but he said y'all were all very coachable. But what did you, because all of y'all were very successful when you left, and that's no secret. That's your parents, the people around you, but a lot of it's your coaches that instill that whatever it is in you to challenge you to move forward. What did he instill in you that gave you extra drive? You were already destined to be a doctor, let's face it. Your family was all in medicine. But what did he give you that extra little push?
Well, I was so slow at everything I did. I mean, he was so nice to me when we ran wind sprints. He would let the whole other team run the wind sprints, and me and Fred LaRose, the two slowest guys in the team, we'd run together, and we'd beat each other by an inch or so every time we'd run. If we ran with the team, we were always 10 or 15 yards behind. He thought that embarrassed us too much, so he really didn't let us run the wind sprints with him. And he's right, Dickie's right, we had no water to drink at football practice at all. He would take the hose and shoot it in your mouth in about half a second, and we'd all head right for the Florida water that everybody had sweated in, drank everybody's water. But you know, everybody talks about how great of a football coach he was. I mean, I was lucky to play football with him. I didn't get to start till my junior year, and I was on the state championship with SP. Then goes some baseball. I was on a couple of state championship teams. He was just a phenomenal baseball coach, and everything he taught you, he was always funny. He always made you want to go to practice. You know, we were part of the team that built the baseball field behind the old school, and practice was always, the first hour was going through all the dirt that they got from the tunnel, picking up the shells. So every practice for an hour, if you didn't get a full bucket of shells, then you had to stay there a little bit longer. But they made that into a really nice, one of the nicest baseball fields we had in Homer. We had our own green monster in left field, if you remember. You had to hit a pretty good shot to get
like
it over there.
30
He
foot
thought
high.
of that because the fence was so close, you know, you could have popped one out of there. But it got to be pretty hard to hit it out of that. My favorite story about Buddy, though, you know, he's a great football coach. He was a great baseball coach. But one year, we had no basketball coach. And it was the year that we won the state championship. And, of course, the season lasts longer. So we get back here, and basketball starts the next day. So he rounds up all the guys that are playing basketball. He said, look, y'all get out on the cement court and practice. I got too many things to do. I'll pick y'all up next Saturday. We got a tournament in Thibodaux. We're going to go play in that basketball tournament in Thibodaux. So we go out there, practice by ourselves on the cement court. You know, SP was on the team. We had a couple other guys on the team. And we just kind of shot around, played basketball. Sure enough, he picked us up. He handed us out our uniforms. Well, we put them on. We get on the bus, we drive to Thibodeau. So we're on the sidelines. He looks at all of us. He says, SP, you're going to be the captain. And SP says, sure, glad to do that, Coach. He says, this is what we're going to do. You're going to go out there to talk to the referees, and if we win the toss, we want to receive. I tell you, I laughed so hard at that. That's my favorite story, buddy. But again, he has been one of my favorite. I was fortunate enough for a while to be his doctor for a while, and I mean, just to see him and have him come in my office, I felt so proud that he would let me have a chance to even examine him and see him and talk to him. And every time we got together, we'd talk. He remembers anything and everything, especially about sports.
When I was asking him about you and Eddie, because I know the way y'all like to play jokes and clown around, he said he taught history and civics at St. Francis. When he got to South Terrebonne, he taught driver's ed. He said, they let me just teach driver's ed. They wanted me to win, so just driver's ed. But he said that he took you and Eddie upstairs to teach y'all business math. And he was explicit about that. Do you remember him taking you upstairs and teaching you some math courses?
Not me. He didn't teach me any math
Eddie,
courses.
do you remember?
But he did teach business math.
Eddie remembers, okay.
He did teach business math, but he taught that to the football players that didn't take the physics and the sciences that we were taking downstairs.
So that's Eddie's raising his hand.
Eddie was a pawn for it. That guy, he would sneak away to get out the easiest way he could. And he was smarter than all of us, but he would go take business courses and phys eds just so he could play sports. Don't believe a word he says either.
Oh, you know, I'm gonna get to Eddie in a little bit. Coach Albert, you know, oftentimes when I interviewed you over the years, you're probably the only coach I've ever interviewed more than Buddy Marcello. And naturally, because of the record you have, you're a legend also. But whenever I'd interview Buddy Marcello, he always brought up Gerald Albert and Lely Day. And whenever I interview y'all, you always bring up Buddy Marcello. So y'all always are passing the torch back and forth. But when you took over some of these sports, especially softball at Vanderbilt, and you built this dynasty in softball, nobody could touch y'all. How much of that was based on what you learned in the past and maybe certain formulas that you learned or certain ways to carry yourself or teach students? Because I felt you were the same way. You didn't get real riled up teaching these girls, but somehow you got the point across. Was part of that learning from Buddy Marcello?
Well, when all these guys were winning state championships in baseball at St. Francis, I was at Nichols, and even there you could hear about Buddy Marcello. And I got to find out who Buddy Marcello was, and when I got an opportunity to coach at St. Francis, I just felt like I was going to do everything possible to try to be able to be like Buddy Marcello. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I put 40 years in coaching. And in those 40 years, I just felt that if I could do one more thing in my coaching career and have to be able to go through it again, I would have just loved the opportunity to coach with Buddy Marcello, to play with for Buddy Marcello. Mm-hmm. But that didn't work out. But, you know, he was just a great guy. One thing I want to say, I kind of said that my wife Ora and I got kind of close to Buddy after he and I retired. And my wife and I was going to a Vanderbilt football game about 2 years ago. And as many of you know, the coaches, after so many years in coaching, they get a free coaching card and get you in the game free. Mm-hmm. So I was walking up with Ora, and who's standing next to by the ticket booth was Buddy Marcello. He kind of walked up to me and said, "Hey, Coach, you got your coaching pass?" I said, "Buddy, yeah, I got it." He said, "Well, let me use it." He said, "I want to get in the game." He said, "I lost mine." I said, "Buddy, they just named the whole stadium after you. You think they're going to charge you to get in?" But that's the way he was, just a great guy.
In 1942, I was a senior at Terrebonne. And my dad had a grocery store on the corner of Liveron and Hobbs. And we would work, all three boys would help Daddy out. One Saturday night, we would go almost ready to close. And here comes a Marine walking the front door. See? He was recruiting. And I was kind of ready to go, you know, because I was going to graduate that year. He returned me down on account of my eyes, you see. So that Monday I got back to school and I started talking to Coach Tom Smith, told him what the situation was. I was still only 17 years old. He said, buddy, what I can do is drop you a subject and then you can't graduate. You can come back and play another year. In those days, you could play 10 semesters. Today, you could only play 8. When the next school year started, which was 42, they gave me 3 subjects. And then that was my last year. So I finished school in 42. No, 43. 42 was the football season. 43 was when school was out. As soon as I graduated, I made some plans with some of my friends, George A. Baird, who was the assessor for years, a couple of other guys. We're going to New Orleans and we're going in. I said, look, fellas, they can't draft me yet. I'm not old enough. I can go where I want to go. So sure enough, I heard about the Seabees. I said, I think I'm going to go in the Seabees. Compared to the Army, it was just a private. I think they got $50 a month. I got $75 a month. So I take off and I go to Virginia for training and then send us to Maine for a couple of months, then all the way to California. And then I spent 33 years altogether, but 2 years in the Pacific. I got out the Navy in I think it was March of 46. And I graduated in 50. And I played football the last 2 years there because before 46, they used a single wing formation and I wasn't fixed for that. They hired a guy from Oklahoma State to put in the T formation. I think Stanford was the first university to use it. And I think the Chicago Bears was the first pro team. So we put it in, and I was the only guy who could throw the football. So they put me at quarterback. And that picture you got, it's me at quarterback. Now baseball, I made baseball the first 3 years. In the meantime, Ray had already been released from the prison camp in Germany. And he went to LSU. Bishop Schick was the priest in charge over there. He said, Ray, you know that little school, St. Francis, they need something to get some kids in school. He said, we need some athletics programs. He said, you know, I'm going to be transferred to Homer. He said, look for me a coach. Ray said, oh, look too far, because I was ready to graduate. Sure enough, I started in 1950. We didn't have a high school baseball team until I started one at St. Francis. Nobody else around here had baseball. But when we started winning all the time, everybody wanted to have baseball. Buck Seaver was coaching at Terrebonne. He didn't like baseball. He didn't want his football players to fool with baseball. Until we started getting all the players at our place to come play baseball. And he changed his mind. And he let Sid Terrio take over for a while. I tell you what, for years when I was growing up, every kid in Terrebonne Parish loved baseball. They'd play somewhere. They'd find a lot, they'd get a old broken bat and nail it together and get some tape and go around a ball or something. You know, when I took my job, I knew right away that I was going to have a good baseball team because I had seen a lot of these kids in the pocket, you know, playing sandlot ball, and I had no problem starting baseball. That started it all right there, you know, and for 10 years, I tell you what, I was a very fortunate coach for 10 years at St. Francis. Those kids wanted to play so bad, you know. And we had a little practice field next to the nuns' living room, like Paul or whatever. And Sister Lua could see out the window. She called me in one day. She says, Buddy, I don't like what's going on out there. She didn't like the idea of the quarterback putting his hand on the quarterback's butt, on the center's butt. I said, sister, they do that in Notre Dame. I told her. I said, hey, they do that in Notre Dame. So that was it. And then we had to go to Delhi to play them. Rained the whole day. I mean, the water was up to our knees. Conrad Pico was the president of the Terrier Club, and he helped us out a lot. He said, buddy, what you want to do? They wouldn't mind delaying the game a week. I said, Conrad, we can't go all the way back home. I said, let's find out something first. Let's meet with the coach in the middle of the field. I'm going to ask him, look, if we got to come back next week, y'all going to pay our expenses again? He says, oh, no. I said, well, we playing tonight. And we went back and forth on the damn wet field all night long until we threw a long pass to SP, set up a touchdown. Then we made the extra point. They scored a little later. They had a great running back that went to LSU. Boy, he broke up the middle and went about 60 yards. And they didn't make the extra point. We went 7-6. Top Terrebonne was a little different. You know, it took me a little while. But I knew they had good athletes down there because we had a few kids from down there when I was at Terrebonne High. They had to come all the way from over there to play football. But I kind of figured out these kids down at Bayer were tough kids, you know, and it's going to take a little while for me to get them going. And especially in baseball, because they didn't play a lot of baseball. The town kids were playing all the time in some kind of program, you know. But the Gano boys came with me, Bruce and Brian, and they helped us get started in football. Brian was a quarterback. Bruce was a hell of a fullback. Look, I coached 31 years. Never had a bit of trouble with any of my players. None.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's truly an honor for me to introduce to you Coach Lucas Buddy Marcello.
State championship football team. And, you know, when Eddie Pilar says you're his idol, that goes a long way. Let me tell you, because he don't pass out those compliments often, right, Eddie?
I'm gonna put this in writing before I go home today.
Well, we have it on tape. You don't need it in writing. But as far as the X's and O's, did you ever see a coach who, he knew the quarterback position pretty well, and we'll get to Mr. Dick and Coach Lely in a second, but what was he like in the X's and O's overall? Was he just a stickler for getting it perfect? Was he a perfectionist?
Let me tell you, later on, I coached about 6 years after I got out of college, but Buddy Marcello was an easygoing guy. This guy, you know, when I was coming up in high school, this guy didn't raise his voice, and only one time he raised his voice at me, and I had to run about 20 sprints outside. But otherwise, he was an easygoing guy. Different coach than many other coaches that I've seen, okay? That was his nature. And I always said this. He came from an outstanding family. His brother was my Boy Scout leader. His other brother was a great guy, and the whole family was great. So it's got to be something with the Italians. The Italians know how to act and live, so I really brave about the Italian people.
Hence the word La Russa.
Yes.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, wait, let me ask you. The 20 sprints you ran, can you tell us what you did to deserve the 20 sprints?
I'm going to tell you the story because I wasn't a nice guy when I was in high school. I did some crazy things.
Well, that shocks me.
They had Buddy really handled this. They had the city police came on the field one day during practice and picked me up. And that was my senior year. And he picked up 2-3 ball players. They picked up 2 or 3 people, from Terrebonne.
Okay, all right.
And what it was in those days, everybody knew how to get into the theater. So you open the side door and everybody go in the theater and watch the movie, free.
Okay.
Well, they came and got us, and Buddy really got carried on with me, and the bishop, the Monsignor
Bishop
Wester,
Shakes now, or West?
Monsignor Wester. So every afternoon after football practice, I had to go over there and memorize the catechism for Monsignor so I could stay in football. But those were some crazy days, but we had fun.
Well, did you learn a lesson from it?
I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did. I did.
Everybody,
I did.
everybody in the
I
audience is
learned the
shaking their
lesson.
head no.
You must pay at the front door. Don't never go to the back door, no matter who opens the door.
All right.
But otherwise, we had a great deal, and the story gets even better. But Buddy was a guy that, I mean, he laid back. I'm telling you, 6 years I coached with different people. There was no comparison of Buddy Marcello.
Quarterbacks, because obviously he knew that position very well. He said, he played it in college, but he didn't play it in high school, but he learned the position. What did he teach you about the quarterback position? Obviously a lot, because you were all state.
Sorry, I have to talk after Al Capone gave his rendition of whatever. I wouldn't have sat next to him if I knew that he was arrested. My gosh, I didn't think San Francisco boys ever did the kind of thing. Anyway, I don't know. We used to play sandlot football at the CYO lot, and I had the football in the helmets, so I was a quarterback, naturally. I made myself a quarterback. I always played quarterback, even sandlot football, for whatever reason. I don't know why. But Buddy taught me how to be a quarterback. And he never raised his voice, like everybody said. Buddy can make you feel bad just by looking at you, talking to you. But he had a knack, and he was a left-hander. And it was hard for him to teach a right-hander, but he did it. He was a left-hander. He threw a football with his left hand. But we had repetition, Martin. We ran plays over and over and over and over again until you perfected it. And everybody's saying, about Buddy, how great he was. Well, he was even better than great. He was one of the finest men I've ever met in my life. And I respect Buddy Marcello, as well as Ray Marcello was my scoutmaster back in the day, too. I think SP or somebody mentioned Ray was a scoutmaster. Just a great family. And Buddy was a great teacher. I think his history of winning everything that he's won in football, baseball, at St. Francis, and at South Terrebonne is a tribute to that. But he was a lousy basketball coach. That's all I can say. I went out for basketball. He said, Dickie, stick with football and baseball. He said, you can't double dribble all the time. I said, Coach, I can't dribble a ball and run at the same time. He said, no, dummy. He said, that's not your sport. So I quit that night. It was against Thibodeau College. So I never played basketball like some of these guys did.
But
Dickie's the only one I
the-
think played basketball.
he said in the interview that he liked coaching baseball better than football. Baseball was his deal.
Buddy was the best groundskeeper of anyone. Somebody mentioned about picking up a bucket of shells at the field at the old San Francis boys' school. Well, Buddy would take, we played baseball at the American Legion Stadium back on behind the swimming pool and all, back on Williams Avenue. They had a baseball field. The home engines played there.
Right.
And that's where we played our baseball games. And Buddy had that thing, I mean,
Yeah, but
it was better than any major
but
league.
it's no secret that Brian Gano, the way he kept a field and the way I watched Coach Albert,
Well,
keep
Coach
a field.
Albert, I remember, Brian was at South Terre.
no, when Brian coached at Vanderbilt,
Yeah,
that
when
field
he
was
at
meticulous.
Vanderbilt.
Field was meticulous. So you learn from the
But he
people.
learned, I think, Brian learned from Buddy.
Yeah,
He would drag a cyclone fence behind a tractor.
right.
And that mound and that infield, if you made an error on a bad bounce, that was your error. It wasn't Buddy's error.
But we didn't have shells. We didn't have shells to pick out of our dirt like y'all did. And he told me about the tunnel. They were digging the tunnel, and he went and talked to the guy and bringing all the dirt to the, the old school yard.
And he also did that for Babe Ruth. He was the head of Hawk, and the Babe Ruth field was just pristine also.
When me
And
and your
Little League.
your son was playing too, when we had the Vanderbilt alumni tournaments all the time, and we had to show off in our class, and we went buy uniforms every year to look better than the other team. After each time we played, he would come ask me if he could have the pants for the Hawk program. Yeah, because he knew we'd be buying a new pair the next year, so we'd give him the uniforms, and he'd use the uniforms. So
When they had Buddy, and they had a couple of coaches would come by, and then it was just fun. You look like you didn't. It's just something you do, even if they didn't pay you. It was great.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, starting off the first time, and then the second game was the last game we played when we won 10 games in a row. That was really a wonderful game. We played, did I mention that? We played Thibodeau High. Yeah, I mentioned that already. That was unbelievable that we get out and we score. The final score, we were even, and we were 2 yards from the game, 2 yards from winning the whole thing. And as a matter of fact, I still laugh at this. The coach at Thibodeau High, he was right in front of me. He was supposed to be on the sidelines, you see, and I still could see Mr. Fake, and boy, he was right in the front. And anyway, the game ended with tied game, and those days that was it. It was over. So I enjoyed watching that game, and I enjoyed playing with it, and I thought about it for years and years.
let me ask Coach Gano something. When those older coaches, your coaches, former coaches, would go to watch Vanderbilt play baseball, or football for that matter, and you were the head coach, how much pressure did it put on you that a Buddy Marcello, or even a Coach Albert for that matter, were in the stands watching? Did it make you up your game a little bit?
With Coach Marcello, we used to laugh, and I'd always tell him, I said, Coach, this field, I don't know if it's going to ever look as good as your fields, but we're trying. We're working hard at it.
Yeah.
And he would just laugh. He would have fun with it. But he would always say, he said, go have fun. Go have fun. I never felt extra pressure for my teams to be able to perform because he was there.
He
In
used
fact,
that word fun
I
a
was
bit.
honored that he was there.
He used the word fun in the interviews quite a bit. He obviously loved what he was doing.
I can remember, there's so many things, but in football, for instance, we had his 2 assistants at South Terrebonne was Coach Bob Groh and Coach Jackson Brumfield, 2 outstanding football coaches. Coach Groh was in charge of the defensive coordinator. So, of course, most of us played both ways anyway. But we're working on defense in practice, and our middle linebacker, Butch Sanger, outstanding athlete. Butch ended up taking a fake and not taking care of his gap. And Coach Groh, Bob Groh, was just raising hell with him. And all of a sudden, Coach Marcello walks up, and this is what he was good at doing. He said, hold up, guys. He said, Butch, he said, I don't care if Marilyn Monroe runs through here naked. You don't touch her. And then he hesitated for a moment, and he said, that's my job. So here was Coach Bob Groh raising hell, and he had a tendency to know when to step in
Right.
and make it very light. but made the point.
Danny, during the interview in 2004, and I was watching it, and when I asked him about his wife being in the stands, supporting every move he made, you could tell that in 2004, I saw the sparkle back in his eye. And so there was no hiding that. Wasn't she a Miss Terrebonne, I think, twice maybe, I don't know.
Aunt Irma was a beautiful woman, okay? No, that was the love of Buddy's life, okay? And, you know, I think you and I might have talked about this morning when we talked on the telephone. Aunt Irma and Uncle Buddy could have been Hollywood movie stars. They looked so good. I mean, listen, Uncle Buddy was a good-looking man. When he first went to the nursing home, like Coach Dake said, he said they had a bunch of old people over there. Those old ladies were looking out at Uncle Buddy, okay? I can tell you that. But
His first couple of years in San Francisco, all the girls.
oh, definitely.
We couldn't get a date.
You know, SP alluded to the Italians in the family. I can tell you, being in that family for over 50 years, okay, they were special. And Uncle Buddy and my father-in-law Ray and Uncle Curtis just had a respect for their parents. That's where it came from hard work. And Buddy liked to keep things light, okay, and Uncle Curtis did too. My father-in-law was a little more serious, right. Okay, but I can tell you that family was everything to all of them, and that was instilled in them by their parents. Mm-hmm. And you know, as the story goes, when my father-in-law was a prisoner of war, that's when Papa Marcello's hair turned gray, okay, when he found out. But, you know, Uncle Buddy, I can't say enough about him. It's so easy just for me to say Uncle Buddy, because he was always there for me, and he was always there. These guys are fortunate. They played and coached with him. Mm-hmm. And we all have so many stories. I worked with him at father-in-law's furniture store in the summer. When I first got back out to service, I taught a while, and Buddy and I would get the job of cleaning out the warehouse, okay, in the summer on the railroad track. But I have to tell this one story. Everybody knows Buddy smoked all the time, all right? He goes to deliver a box spring and mattress, he and one of the guys, and he comes back, and when he gets there, all that's left is the box spring, just a metal. Because he threw a cigarette out the window when he was going to deliver the box spring and mattress. And when he got back, he said, man, I was going down the road, and he said, everybody was waving at me, so he said, I was waving back. The mattress and box spring were on fire in the back of the truck. But look, he made a joke out of it. My father-in-law laughed, and everybody went on their merry way, went and get another box spring and mattress, and went and delivered it. But that's the kind of guy he was. I mean, like I said, these guys were fortunate. They saw him in a football setting as their coach. Some of them coached with him, dear friends. He was just, when you knew Buddy Marcello, you had to love him, because he was there for you all the time.
Let me ask, and I think I'm going to be asking the right guy this question, Eddie Palaro, that, you know, SP, you know, he came clean. There were a few times where Coach Marcello, he says one, I'm sure there was several, where Coach Marcello had to get him straight back in line. Looking at all this group, I would think that you would be second on the amount of times that Coach Marcello might have had to reel you in a little bit, because, you know, you like to play practical jokes and do different things. Any story you got where Coach Marcello had to reel you in a little bit?
With that question, I think I'm gonna ask you a question. 'Cause I know some things about you.
This is my interview. I asked the question.
You're in charge. But before I answer that, I want to tell you why SP was my idol. Not only did he know how to get in the side door, but he taught me how to wait for the movie to be over, and then people would start walking out. And if you had real smooth moves, you could walk back in the back way and get in for free. And he taught me, well, there's a lot of other things he taught me. But that was, you know, so he didn't just go in the side door. He also knew how to go in the front door without paying, you know. So I don't know.
So
And
you
Dickie is right. He was in charge of the mafia here. There ain't no doubt about it. You might want to not print all that.
I've often talked to SB
All right.
about that.
Yeah, Coach was tough. You know, he wasn't a screaming coach. He wasn't a kind of a coach that was just on your behind all the time. But when you were not too much of an athlete, he really had to push you hard. And not that he ever pushed me hard, because I must have been really good or something. I don't know. But no, he pushed a kid like me hard because I had no speed, although I could beat Dr. Dickey by a quarter of an inch. I wasn't with him and Fred at the end of the practice. I had no speed. I had no real strength. You know, just how do you take a kid like that and make something out of him? And that's what I think Buddy's, one of his best abilities was, to take somebody and do something with them, you know. I think a question earlier you asked about his meticulousness. He was very meticulous about offensive plays. We had 2 to the left, we had 2 to the right, and we ran them over and over and over again. He didn't have a gigantic offense. Now, he might have when he had a brainy quarterback. I saw terrible,
like
I'm
Brian,
not
yeah.
sure. But you know,
So he had that Vince Lombardi approach.
straight ahead.
Yeah.
You know, and we never
Get it
threw the-
right every time.
You didn't throw the ball too much.
Execution.
SB caught 1 pass his whole senior year. Yeah. But no, he was just a meticulous type of person, the way he just went over and over and over everything. And like I said earlier, we had the same signals in 10, 11 years in baseball. He would look at you and say, hey, if I want you to bunt, you better be able to put it down, and you better know what baseline to put it down on, you know. And yeah, you knew, because we practiced it over and over and over again, you know. So yeah, he was easy to play for. You didn't realize it at the time, but you can look back now and say, gosh, was he a integral part of my life? There's no doubt about it.
I want to ask Dr. Dickey, because talking with Danny about family, he was really part of your family too, because of course your brother Dr. Jerry married into the Marcello family, so they connected that away. Were you conscious of all that when you were playing for him? Was that part of the equation?
I used that to get into the starting lineup, to be honest with you. No, I really didn't realize that at the time, but after I realized that my sister-in-law was real close to him, I let him know that I was a relative, kind of.
So what did, I mean, we talk about meticulous, and of course you being in the medical field, you got to be sort of meticulous. But were y'all clicking on that same thing? Because we talked, some coaches are not that meticulous, others are very meticulous. At a young age, were y'all sensing that he was pretty much on the ball with everything?
Well, they talked about everything in baseball, how meticulous he was in baseball. You knew everything in baseball. In football, though, we really had some good football teams when he coached. And when you go out there, you know, he knew we could beat the team we were going to play. So, I mean, he wasn't really too tough on us. He went through everything like he was supposed to. But it seemed like sometimes there were teams he knew we could beat, so we just kind of went through the motions. But when you played a team that he didn't think we could beat, I mean, he was as meticulous as you can get. We played a team one time, was ranked #1 in the country. It was on our way to the state championship game. And I've never seen Buddy Marcello get so meticulous in my whole life. He handed every player a printout of what they were supposed to do for that particular game. He says, you guys are not supposed to beat this team, but if you follow the stuff I'm giving you on this paper, we're going to beat this team. And I'll be damned, we did it. We really beat this team.
Wow.
And I'll never forget that, you know, that I've never seen him want something so bad as he did against that team that was ranked #1 in the country.
Yeah, he
But
talked
the
to
plan for him, I mean, it was fun. He made jokes out of every sport. He made you laugh. He made you look forward to practice, which is something hardly anybody ever does. If it was really too hot out there, he'd crack a couple jokes to get you to go on a little bit more. I mean, it was always fun. Baseball practice, when he would pitch, he'd get that big black left-handed glove with 7 balls in it, He'd throw 4 hours of batting practice and never get tired. And then he'd throw at you a couple of times if you hit him too hard. So, but he was just fun to play for. And,
Probably better having him throw at you than Harold
well, he
Haydale, huh?
didn't throw very hard. He liked you to hit the ball out the ballpark, so he would throw it nice and soft, left-handed over the plate, you know.
What about prayers on the bus? Because I know with Coach Alvin, we all went to Vanderbilt. Prayers and rosaries and everything
That's
was.
another story I got to tell you. Prayers on the bus were good, but actually sometimes, you know, we'd go to New Orleans and we'd have to cross over the Sunshine Bridge. He would not say the prayers, but all the players would say the prayers. Because as he would go over, the little windshield on the bus would hit the side, and it would go over to the other side, it would hit the side. So he wasn't the prayer guy. We were all saying the prayers when we crossed the Sunshine Bridge.
I bet the most nervous one in that bus was SP because he wasn't ready to go yet.
I think SP was in the front seat. He had him sit up close just to make sure he'd behave.
So, Coach Alvin, when you had conversations with Buddy Marcello, what do two legends talk about? I'm sort of curious.
Well, when I have had conversation with Buddy, I tried to listen as much as I could, try to learn something from him, because, you know, I think in the years that the Old Boys School and Vanderbilt's have been in existence, I've said this before, I think he's the best coach that Vanderbilt and St. Francis ever had. And I think maybe in the future he's going to be the best one they ever had. So I always listen, try to pick up things from him. And one thing else I'm going to mention, Lully said he forgot exactly how much he was paid, but I remember the first year I was coaching, I was an assistant football coach and a head basketball coach, and I made $3,600. And at the end of the year, you met with Monsignor West, who signed contracts. And when it was my turn, I walked in and he looked at me and he said, "You can be doing the same thing you did last year." He said, "I'm going to give you a raise." He says, "You can get $100 more."
Wow. You know, I want to ask you another question, because I've been hearing simplicity in the way Coach Marcello coached. I remember when I was coaching 8th grade, when they asked me to coach 8th grade one year, Chad Haydell, Dr. Dickinson was on that team, and I took the playbook that Coach Becker had for the varsity when I played, and I said, well, I'm just going to mimic the same playbook. It had 16 plays, and I was beating my head against the wall trying to make those 8th graders learn that playbook, and they couldn't, and I was getting frustrated. You were in the stands watching, and after practice, you said, "Come see." So I sat up there and said, "Coach, what am I doing wrong?" You took that playbook, you started tearing plays out of it, and you left me with 5 plays. You said, these are 8th graders. They're never going to learn 16 plays. Simplicity. Coach Marcello did the same thing. Can you overcoach guys like SP if you gave SP too many plays? Would it hurt the team?
Yeah, I would think you could, you know. And one thing I want to mention too is that, you know, a good coach is always going to have good athletes. And I think Buddy was fortunate in his coaching careers to have people like these people who were good athletes and just good people.
Last question. What difference did Buddy Marcello make overall in your life? In other words, you can answer it by, what would it have been like without Buddy Marcello? And then include some parts, what was it like to have Buddy Marcello in your life?
Very few of us would have gone to college. And those that didn't go to college, they became businessmen without going to college and did well, and have done well. Very few of us would have amounted to much, because the nuns could not teach us anymore, the boys. We were running the classes. The sisters were great women. But when you got to be a junior or a senior or a sophomore in high school, it was hard for the nuns to discipline the older boys. So Buddy Marcello and the Brothers of the Sacred Heart did a lot for me and all of my classmates after me also.
All right. Coach Lely Day?
Well, to tell you the truth, without Buddy, I'm not so sure what would have happened. Because we had no sports at all. We played after school. It's the one that some of us didn't get hurt real bad, because we played tackle football with no equipment. So without Buddy, but you know, I'm gonna go back just a short minute. We used to play on the sidelines there when we had not only the white boys, we played with the black boys too. But one day I had y'all don't remember Tommy Harding, but Tommy he could really write. This guy could write. He had beautiful. I said, you know what? We got the worst place. We don't have anything at all to play football here. Nothing. I said, you know what we're gonna do? He said, get your paper out. We're gonna write Frank Leahy at Notre Dame. We're gonna get some of his equipment. He said, all he can do is tell us. So sure enough, he said, well, how you gonna get it up there? I said, I got a brother at Notre Dame, and I can get it, and I can give it to him, and he's gonna give it. And sure enough, that's what we did. And you know, about a week later, we got a card from Frank Leahy. And you know what he does? He makes a comment. He says, boys, we really think so much of you guys, but we got to give the equipment to another school very far from now. He says, but I really look forward. So anyway, we stopped. So Tommy Hardin and I said, look, you can take it this week. I'm going to have it next week. Okay. So sure enough, about 3 weeks later, Tommy and I are sitting right there, and we getting ready to leave, and Monsignor Shakespeare comes right there. And I was handing this to Tommy Harding, and the Monsignor Shakespeare says, hey, boys, he says, well, what is that right there? And I said, that's Frank Leahy's card. He says, let me see that. And sure enough, he says, y'all really wrote something to Frank Leahy? That's it right there. He says, can I have this for a while? I said, yeah, you can have it, but we want it back. So sure enough, he goes to New Orleans next 2 days later, and he says, he came back, he says, we're gonna get a coach for you guys. And sure enough, Buddy was the main guy to get. So this is a true story.
Wow.
And we had so many people that they didn't quite believe it, because Tommy Hardin and I thought that was a pretty good deal.
Well, what I learned out of that, Coach Gano, is that Coach Lely Daig's handwriting wasn't that good, right? Coach?
What I learned from Coach Marcello, more than anything, and there's so many things I learned, but organization, leadership, and how to maintain a good sense of humor through all of that. Mm-hmm. And just to add to one of Dickie's stories with baseball, he had that old black glove. He still had it at South Terrebonne. He would get on the mound and throw some batting practice. He would throw nothing but trash at us, and he would laugh and have fun. And he'd tell the guys, he'd say, hey guys, he said, you heard of Whitey Ford, huh? And the guys would shake, yeah. He said, you're looking at Blackie Chevrolet. That was his favorite line to him.
Hey, Danny.
Yeah, Martin, I just want everybody out there to realize, when Buddy played at SLI, then the USL, he was a starting quarterback for 2 years. Right. He was a starting first baseman for 3 years. Came to Homer, started a program at St. Francis, then moved to South Terrebonne, started a program at South Terrebonne. And our talk today, which was Hark Then, was responsible for that. So he took things from nothing and made something out of it. And, and that was because, I heard the word meticulous around, jovial, he was very good at what he did, and he had his mind set where he wanted it to go. And he never quit. He was, listen, up until a few years ago, he would have still been cutting grass at those ballparks, okay? but it just, time caught up with him. But, you know, like I said, these guys were fortunate. They have played for him and coached with him. I'm fortunate to have been a part of his life in our family.
And can I also say, he broke some racial barriers
Oh, no doubt.
when he brought in some coaches, African-American coaches, who got turned down by other local schools. He brought them in, and he would have supper with them at the house first to learn who they were. And to this day, a couple of them say he was like a brother to
Sure,
them.
Uncle Buddy was ahead of his time, in my opinion. Okay, he was ahead of his time.
Well, I think it was quite easy to say what Buddy meant to me was, you know, just that mentor in a sense. Buddy's attitude to everybody on the team was equal. And whether you were a great athlete or a mediocre athlete like I was, he was really, you know, easy on you to that extent. So what does he do? He gives you the, you know, the desire to excel. And I think that's the biggest thing I got from him. I also learned how to take 5 cents and make 10 cents from him, because that's exactly what he would do. You heard he talked when they were digging the tunnel to give us an infield. Right. There was not a nickel that he threw into the garbage, I promise you. He squeezed every penny he could. And again, the St. Francis didn't have much money back then either, but he would squeeze everything. Dickie told a story this weekend. I wish I could tell you all about something that happens to athletes who don't wear clean underwear. We didn't get our underwear, if I can call it that, washed every day, maybe once a week, you know, and he just squeezed every penny he could so that he could keep the program going at the old St. Francis, because the church wouldn't give him any money, and it was a real small school, as everybody has said today. But just an honor to have known him, and luckily in my life later on became friends and got to do things with him. Got to ride back from an LSU baseball game one night at 93 years old with him driving, and that that was fun. Okay,
Wow.
that was and you think SP was praying? This other Italian was really praying, I promise you. But yeah, just that friendship that developed after you quit playing for him or finished playing for him, you end up being his friend for life. You know, in a sense. So I think I don't have anybody. I've never heard one word in this entire community in my entire life that was ever said against Buddy. And my dad was always thankful for Buddy, because my dad tried to make an athlete out of me and was very unsuccessful. You know, and Buddy was able to help me accomplish a couple of things in life. You know, so thank you, Buddy, for a million things.
All right. Dr. Dickey?
Yeah, well, Buddy was already a legend to me when I first went out for football in the 8th grade. Both my brothers had played for him before, and they would always talking about good things about him. Of course, this little guy walks up and there's this famous coach, as far as I was concerned. Okay, what position you want to play and all this other stuff. And from then on, I mean, I respected him so much, he made you want to play for him. Didn't matter what sport you played. He kind of always brought out the best in you. And even if you weren't very good, he kind of made you think you were better than you were. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's where we were able to accomplish more than we were really had the ability to accomplish. And it was just fun playing for him. And like I say, whenever I do any sport, or whenever I say what I did or who I played for, he's the first person that comes up to mind. He's always been the best coach I've had and the most fun coach that I've had. And it's been a joy to know him, and a joy to be with him, and a joy to see him at 90 years old and talk to him. He still remembers everything bad you did with him, and he reminds you, and, you know, it's just a wonderful man. And I hate to see his life come to an end, because he's definitely a legend.
Coach Albert, another legend. Your thoughts?
Well, Buddy meant so much to me. When I first got to St. Francis, but although he wasn't there physically, you know, he was there. And I just always thought that if I could get and be half as good a coach as Buddy, I would be successful.
Well, I think when we look at your record, you know, of a lot of people, your record is pretty phenomenal. Your record too, but I guess it was good that y'all could sit there and talk, because Buddy had 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, then a championship in 59 and 61. My question would be, who was on that 58 and 60 team that let it all down, let everybody down? Because it was just a stretch. And then, of course, he had the football championship, and your numbers are equally as well. So I would imagine that conversation between you and Coach Buddy was different than a player and a coach. Y'all both respected each other quite a bit.
Very much so, very much so.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you all for coming. What a testimonial to a great coach. And you know, he's looking down and he's probably saying y'all forgot one or two stories, or y'all added a little something, especially you, Mr. Dickey. Probably added a little. So he talked about that chicken coop on the one-on-one thing. He said we had to go in there and move cows and chickens so that we could have a place to dress. And at South Terrebonne, he said y'all had to dress in the gym. You had to close a petition because there was really no facility. And he never had a home stadium.
No, we didn't have a home stadium, but there was a makeshift locker room. It wasn't
Right.
very big, but it was a makeshift locker room.
But at St. Francis, he played at Tom B. Smith Stadium and also at Terrebonne. Never had. Right, exactly. Well, thank y'all very much for joining us. We appreciate it. And what we'll do now, we'll take a short break. This is Buddy Marcello week, not day. We're going to have stuff all throughout the week. And you heard the St. Francis. And well, you heard Brian Gaynor from the South Terrebonne side, but he coached at Vanderbilt too. But tomorrow we're bringing in the South Terrebonne gang, and that's a whole new landscape to talk about, so it'll be quite interesting. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow.